I'm going to vote Republican because I think a Republican should represent this district.
The mayor of El Cajon is just one of the voters we talked with today about the future of Duncan Hunter. Our minds changing in the district now that the congressman is facing a criminal trial. Verizon backtracks after news that the company limited internet access to first responders during wildfires. A major change is announced. Plus, ride at your own risk and don't worry about a ticket. California might make helmets optional for electric scooter rentals.
And think about, do these archetypes exist today as we're illustrating? And if they do, what does that mean? I want them to think about where we are today and can things reoccur?
Digging deep into Shakespeare to build a new play inspired by Richard III. We'll show you the new production by the La Jolla Playhouse. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Susan Murphy. Voters in East County are talking to KPBS about the criminal charges against Congressman Duncan Hunter. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman is live in El Cajon, where a demonstration is planned tonight. Matt.
Yeah, Susan, that demonstration is planned
I'm
right
very
here.
concerned about the allegations. I read the indictment. It's pretty scathing, but I want to see what happens.
Even though El Cajon Mayor Bill Wells says he's concerned, he's still planning to vote for Hunter in November.
I'm going to vote Republican because I think a Republican should represent this district. In my personal view of this is that I don't think he will be a congressman for a long period of time. I think that this scandal, whether it's fair or not fair, has probably destroyed his political career.
Congressman Hunter says the indictment is politically motivated.
This is the U.S. government, what I would call the deep state, or folks in the U.S. government that don't care what the election does, that they want to rig the election their own way.
Most people we talked to in an Alpine shopping center shared that view.
The election's a few weeks away, so what they're trying to do is get everybody to see, to see the news in the media so that when they go actually vote, they say, oh, well, this was on the news, and whether it's true or not. He's already guilty by a media association and the liberals,
Yeah, but when there's smoke, there's fire.
Others believe the allegations against Hunter and his wife are serious.
Just allegedly, but I'm sure that it's going to turn out that what they have is going to be damaging to him.
Hunter has said he has done nothing wrong and that his wife used to be in charge of his finances.
It turns out he's, going to blame his wife. I mean, are you kidding me? No, I would never vote for him, especially now.
Wells ran against Hunter in the June primary and says Republicans in East County are feeling pressure.
The odds of a Democrat coming in and taking the seat have just gone up significantly.
Every year, Californians vote on initiatives that start with a clipboard and a signature. But as Ben Bradford from Capitol Public Radio reports, there's a push to take money out of the process.
Campaigns usually pay professionals $1, $2, sometimes $5 or more for each of the hundreds of thousands of signatures needed to qualify a ballot measure.
That per signature payment corrupts the process.
Democratic State Senator Henry Stern argued it incentivizes misleading or underhanded tactics to get pen on paper. Republican State Senator Joel Anderson said the bill's ban will increase campaigns' cost.
If I have to pay somebody an hourly rate, sure, then only the rich people can afford to put things on the ballot.
It's not exactly cheap now. Campaigns will spend at least a couple $1 million just to qualify a measure. But business groups, which rely more heavily on paid freelancers, could feel the effect more than labor unions, which often use their own members to collect signatures. The governor has vetoed a similar measure before, back in 2011. At the state capitol, I'm Ben Bradford.
The latest court hearing on the separation of immigrant families involves parents who say they were coerced or misled into agreeing to removal. Many of the 500 cases yet to be resolved include parents who have been deported. Their children are still being held in the U.S. Meanwhile, families continue to show up at the border from around the world to seek asylum. KPBS reporter Jean Guerrero was there earlier today for a special report on Facebook Live.
I'm here at the San Ysidro Port of Entry on the Mexican side of the border, and behind me you can see dozens of asylum seekers who are still trying to get into the United States. Despite the Trump crackdown on immigrants and asylum seekers And despite Attorney General Jeff Sessions saying that people no longer can qualify for asylum if they're fleeing gang violence or domestic violence, there are still dozens of people coming to the border every day because they're fleeing gang violence and domestic violence. One thing that's interesting about what we're looking at right now is the fact that the asylum seekers are self-organizing to get into the United States. Basically, because the ports of entry are at capacity, these are people who are trying to present themselves legally at the port of entry to ask for asylum, and they're being turned away. When they actually go up to CBP officials in the United States, they're told that the ports are at capacity and that if they want to get into the United States, they need to wait. So this is the solution that the asylum seekers have come up with, which is basically there's a list inside of that crowd in a notebook where people are putting down their names. Thousands of people are on this list, and everybody has to wait 2 to 3. Some people who I've spoken to have had to wait 5 weeks, 6 weeks. And what we're looking at right now is basically the asylum seekers trying to decide who's going to get in today. Let me see if any of these people are willing to talk. ¿Usted habla español? ¿Qué número tiene usted? 701. So this woman, her number is 701. ¿Y en qué número están ahorita? 576. So they're in 576 now, so she still has many more numbers to go. ¿De dónde viene usted? De Guerrero. So she comes from the state of Mexico, from the state of Guerrero in southern Mexico, and she's here with her family. And she's just waiting to see if they call out, just to see the progress that they're making on the numbers.
That's just part of Jean Guerrero's report on Facebook Live. You can watch more at the KPBS Facebook page. County health officials are warning about exposure to tuberculosis, a serious infection that affects the lungs. The county is reporting 2 unconfirmed cases. People at 3 facilities may have been exposed in recent weeks. Those include Vista Detention Center, North County Court Services, and the Las Colinas Detention Facility. The county is offering free tests to those who might have been exposed. The co-founder of Qualcomm has made a major donation to UC San Diego. Andrew Viterbi is giving $50 million to the school's Department of Ophthalmology and Vision Research. UC San Diego will rename the department after the Viterbi family. A new report shows the San Diego region is expected to accelerate its construction of apartments this year. KPBS editor Tom Fudge has the story.
The report by RentCafe.com says the San Diego metro area is expected to add just over 4,000 new apartment units in 2018. That's a 46% increase from those it added in the previous year, and that makes San Diego a top 10 market in terms of the rate of construction increase. The problem is the region starts from a very low mark. A June report from the city of San Diego showed the city falls far short of the housing supply recommended by the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, a state-based standard. Rent Cafe also showed that Denver, a smaller metro area than San Diego, is expected to build more than 3 times as many apartment units this year as San Diego. Rent Cafe reports are based on reviews of construction plans at city planning departments and contacts with developers. Tom Fudge, KPBS News.
You'll need to earn 6 figures to buy a home in San Diego, plus changes for Horton Plaza and a popular home supply chain. Earlier, I spoke with SDSU marketing lecturer Miro Kopik for the Friday Business Report. Miro, a mortgage website this week, HSH, has a new report saying it takes more than $130,000 to own a median-price home in San Diego. It's a 12% jump from last year. So what does the future look like for affordability in San Diego?
It's a very difficult story. When you have real wages increasing about 3% a year and home prices 12%, the math doesn't add up. And at $130,000, that still means that family barely has other disposable income. When you think about the principal, the interest, the taxes, and the insurance, that's almost 40% of the after-tax income of that $130,000 household. The real implication for people living in San Diego is making sure there's enough higher wage jobs, that from a public policy perspective, affordable housing is being addressed, and then importantly, that rental properties, which are generally less expensive than holding all that costs for a mortgage and taxes, are readily available. And those are the things that are going to be the important questions for public policy leaders going forward.
And on to another real estate story. The sale of Horton Plaza in downtown has been made official, and the Union Tribune says that it's been bought by a real estate investment firm that wants to convert the aging and mostly empty mall into an ultra-modern office campus for high-tech firms. Can San Diego sustain something like this?
This is a great thing for San Diego. When you really, when malls are trying to figure out what they need to be in the future, Stockdale Capital Partners, this investment firm, is really deciding we're going to remake the traditional mall into something brand new and different, and really focusing on the tech side of the house. San Diego's been extraordinarily successful in biotech and life science. Ever since the dot-com boom, traditional technology has kind of lagged in terms of investment. So this is a great way to build that infrastructure to attract the really high-end firms that really have avoided San Diego, like Facebook and Google. And Stockdale can actually talk about this in a meaningful way because they already did this in Phoenix, Arizona. They took a mall called the Galleria, which wasn't doing very well, converted it into this Galleria corporate center, brought in high-tech companies like Zillow and Square and Yelp, and really remade this. And what they're going to do is take the space, they're going to gut the whole mall, they're going to open it up so it's much more pedestrian friendly, and bring in a lot of retail, a lot of restaurants to the bottom floor, and all the upper floors either are huge loft open spaces or specific offices for these tech companies.
Okay, and finally, the Orchard Supply Hardware is closing. One of our editors called it the Whole Foods of hardware, and I know a lot of people are going to miss it. There's one up the road here from SDSU. Why is it closing?
Because it doesn't fit into Lowe's business model anymore. People love Orchard Supply Hardware's personal service. It's been around since the 1930s. It was owned by Sears, spun off, bought out of bankruptcy by Lowe's because they really wanted a presence in California. And they realized that a personalized service business doesn't fit inside their big corporate infrastructure. In fact, 80% of all hardware and home improvement businesses done by Lowe's, Home Depot, and Menards, which is a similar kind of chain based in the Midwest. So this really contributes to very little of Lowe's overall business, and that was their decision to close it. But they're hopefully going to relocate most of their employees to other Lowe's stores, which would be a good news story for the employees.
Oh, that's good news there. Thank you so much, Miro, for joining us.
Thank you.
Tonight on the NewsHour, following the money, a top executive in the Trump Organization agrees to cooperate with federal prosecutors. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
After criticism from state lawmakers, Verizon is changing the way it provides service. The company announced today it will remove speed caps for internet access to emergency workers. Firefighters in Northern California say their access was limited while fighting the Mendocino Complex fire, which is now the largest wildfire in state history. Members of the San Diego-based Urban Search and Rescue Team are in Hawaii tonight. They're helping with the response to Hurricane Lane. San Diego Fire Chief Craig Stowell shared these photos from the team loading up a cargo plane before leaving LA last night. The storm is expected to bring severe flooding and mudslides. No big changes to our weather as we start the weekend. Justin Povic has details in tonight's forecast.
Well, it looks like we're going to be talking about a very similar looking weather pattern over the course of the next several days, more so for the next week or so. Dry weather in place with that southwesterly wind flow. Also looking at onshore flow, and that will keep the clouds at the coast. Some of the interior valleys will start the day off with some low clouds. Temperatures here are going to be running close to normal for the most part. And again, checking out the satellite radar here as we expand the view on out, you'll notice some monsoonal moisture well off toward the east, but not really coming into play here toward the mountainous terrain. Let's talk about the overnight as temperatures settle down into the 60s around Oceanside, 72 San Diego, Borrego Springs dropping down to 73. So again, conditions for tonight, clouding back up, especially toward the immediate shoreline. Not really concerned about any wet weather. And as we venture our way into Saturday, a very similar look and feel out there. Now the Padres are on the road here the next couple of days. Not back at home, I believe, until Tuesday. But if you are venturing out and about beyond mid to late morning, you'll see some sunshine. And again, temperatures here running pretty close to normal for the most part, just a few degrees above the mark, the normal mark towards San Diego at 79, Chula Vista 77, Oceanside at 79, Ramona topping off into the mid 80s. Of course, you would expect to have warmer temperatures toward Borrego Springs, and that's exactly what we'll have. Very similar look and feel early next week, as again we have a dip in the jet stream over the north, bringing some cooler temperatures and some showers, but we will stay on the dry side. Let's talk about the coastal areas, and again right around 80 degrees, clouds to start, sunshine for the afternoon. Inland, much of the same here, very little wiggle room with our temperatures, morning clouds, late day sunshine, mountainous terrain staying dry, lots of sunshine, upper 70s throughout the period into mid next week. And over the deserts here, perhaps a fluctuation of a degree or two. That's about it. Talking about lots of sun. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Povick. Back to you, Susan.
Some riders of electric scooters in San Diego have been slapped with hefty fines for riding without a helmet. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says that could soon change.
Under current state law, adults can choose to ride helmetless on a bike, but not on a motorized scooter, and tickets can cost you around $200. Scooters have boomed in popularity in San Diego thanks to sharing companies like Bird and Lime. A bill passed by the state Senate on Thursday could give them an extra boost by making helmets optional for scooter riders 18 and older. Assemblyman Todd Gloria co-authored the bill. He says electric scooters could help San Diego meet its plans to address climate change.
And I think it's extremely important when talking about how we're going to get people out of their cars, particularly for short-term trips that are, usually less than a couple of miles. This seems to be a solution not only that works, but that people like and are embracing and is affordable.
The bill also caps motorized scooter speeds at 15 miles per hour, and it lets cities and counties expand the types of streets people can ride on. It still needs to clear a final vote in the state assembly and the governor's desk to become law. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Democrats pounced this week after long simmering allegations against a San Diego congressman lead to an indictment. That's coupled with a guilty plea from President Trump's former lawyer and a guilty verdict for his former campaign chair, all this week. How bad were the headlines for the GOP? Join us for the KPBS Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
More than 3 million people call San Diego and Imperial County home, with 9,000 square miles of space. As part of our KPBS Explore project, we traveled to 5 communities to find out what makes these places special. Tonight, we visit the South Bay. Here's the latest from our series, Where I Come From.
National City was rattled by the arrest and detainment of a family, well, actually 2 families. And one of them in particular, there was a video, it was very violent. And they left some minors just unaccompanied and took them on.
Ever since, I've seen on Facebook friends post, hey, like watch out over here, there's ice over here.
The feel in National City after that, I mean, we have different Facebook pages for National City community members, and they exploded with concern.
It impacts like every minute, when you have that like deep-rooted fear right in the back of your mind, you can't make that go away. And I mean, I see a lot of kids really pushing through.
They didn't care if people were really undocumented, because National City is so diverse, we all look the same. So if somebody is being targeted, there's no way to tell just by how they look whether they're documented or undocumented. And so this is really a concern for every National City community member.
When the word immigration or anything comes up, they get scared, they get nervous, and I really think that's terrible.
Yeah, I also do some work at a local food bank where they give away food, and like half their population is not showing up anymore to go get food because they're worried.
my family and I were having dinner at Golden House, which is a pretty popular Chinese restaurant. And at the door was Border Patrol. I was like, what are they doing here? And even though I'm a citizen, I was very anxious because we've seen stories.
We're looking at primarily communities of color community, how many folks may be undocumented, dealing with a lot of issues in Chula Vista who are probably afraid to come out. And if we don't have this infrastructure of support in Chula Vista, how can we really build a base there if we're not outreaching in the Chula Vista community?
Really like to see a good, honest, fair attorney, attorney firm that would be willing to help these people and make sure that, they have a chance to live a nice life.
So we're just looking for hope for a better life.
You can watch the rest of this series at kpbs.org/whereicomefrom. We'd like to hear what you think about our series. You may join the conversation on our KPBS Facebook page. La Jolla Playhouse is hosting the world's premiere of Willpower's play, Seize the King. It reimagines Shakespeare's Richard III for a modern audience. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando spoke with the playwright and director about the challenges of producing a new work.
Working on a new play is like creating a living, breathing thing that's constantly evolving.
It's evolving during the rehearsals. It's evolving during tech. It was evolving 15 minutes ago.
For playwright Willpower, that birth begins with language. For his new play, Seize the King, it was the heartbeat of William Shakespeare's iambic pentameter that drove his creation.
It's the first time that I've reached back to an older structural form, but I think it's the rhythm. First and foremost, to me, it's, you know what I mean, like the undercurrents, the subconscious, the visceral way that the words flow.
Now listen, man, in Buckingham, listen good. A difference there is between not the whole truth and a lie.
It's in iambic pentameter, but it's kind of contemporary language bumping up against the classic forms, and so that's been really fun.
We are what we are.
Seize the King is specifically inspired by Shakespeare's Richard III, but don't expect to hear any of the bard's lines.
There's absolutely no Shakespeare text in it. So my idea was like, what if I was living back then, a brother chilling in Elizabethan times, and this was my version of Richard III.
A version inspired in part by the times we're living in now.
The polarization, the dysfunction, the corruption that exists in society right now in our country, I think that sometimes to explore what's going on today, particularly in extreme times, you have to go back to the past and then reimagine what those ancient old stories are for today.
Director Jaime Castaneda appreciated the way Power developed those contemporary themes.
He was interested in certainly this idea of the cycle of violence, the cycle of evil, the cycle of good to combat evil, but then also he's talking about class, and he's talking about the environment and about family and about a lot of other kind of rich dynamics that you could extract from today's headlines in the play as well.
The ambitious, morally flawed, and highly theatrical nature of Richard also appealed to the director.
Richard talks to the audience, and there's soliloquies, and he's talking to us, and he's kind of taking us on the journey of how he gets the crown.
As the tailor completes his renderings, so must I not waver nor falter till the purpose concludes.
The juiciness of that and the willingness of his character as a protagonist to let us in on it, to kind of let us in, like, come with me. And so you hate him, but you also you just enjoy the ride.
The tailor uses insects at the start of creation, and in mine, maggots come after the deed is done.
He starts the relationship with us, and then we see him kind of execute his plan.
Part of Castaneda's plan involved an innovative use of the theater space.
Sometimes in construction of stage plays, we tend to build up, and so we were interested in kind of going down into the ground. And we dug out where we kind of essentially removed the platform or the decking of the Potiker Theater and have gone all the way down into the pit of the theater. So there's a kind of transparent floor that exposes the I-beams and the structural integrity of the building, and has kind of a staircase that descends down into that pit. It's a stage pit. And so we've lit it down there. We stage entrances and exits from there.
The play is also staged in the round, with a drummer providing a beat for the proceedings. It all works helps to engage the audience more fully and to provoke a conversation.
I want to provoke conversation. I want people to think about characters like Richard III and other people in here like Buckingham and Edward V, and think about, like, you know, do these archetypes exist today as we're illustrating? And if they do, what does that mean? I want them to think about where we are today and can things reoccur? I mean, there were some crazy things that happened in the 20th century, in the 19th century, you know? Slavery in this country, the concentration camps, you know, in Europe, you know, genocide, I mean, crazy stuff. I'm not saying we're there yet, but I want people to think about, like, are we going in that direction?
Audiences can also feel privileged to see the birth of a new play and be part of its evolution as it moves out into the world. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
Seize the King runs through September 16th at La Jolla Playhouse. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. We're ending the show with Gold Souls performing at Capitol Public Radio. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.